We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. But before we do, I know we've got some folks that have expressed a desire to speak this evening or bring their points of view to some things. So we do have a sign-in sheet for anyone that does want to speak tonight. So if you will come up, I'm going to set that over to the side. And anyone that wants to speak, we've had 3 folks that have signed it. And if there are others that want to do that, please do so before the meeting starts, because it's those that are going to be on the list to speak or those that will be allowed to speak during the meeting. So I'll just set that over here. All right. I've got 5 o'clock by Verizon time, so we will start the meeting of the Morgan County Council for December 16th, 2024. This is our last meeting of the year. And if you will stand with us, I'm going to have Jason lead us in the pledge, and then I will lead us in the prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we have the opportunity to come together, voice our opinions, and be free to do that. We thank you for our country. We thank you for those that protect and serve us both nationally and locally, Lord. And we just ask that you be with families that are suffering this time of year. We have some in our community, Lord, that have been diagnosed with serious illnesses, children that are facing this. We don't want it at any time, Lord, but it sure puts a burden on families at Christmas. And we just pray that you be with those that are suffering and hurting right now. And we ask that you be with families that are traveling in the days ahead for the holidays. And we just ask the blessing on our community and our country. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. And first of all, do we not have minutes? We do? Okay. Did everyone have a chance to get the copy of the minutes for October 7th, 2024 and November 6th, 2024? Were there any changes or comments on those? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve.
Brian Copel make a motion to approve the October 7th meeting minutes.
Alyssa Green will second.
Okay. October and November?
October and November as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Brian Culp, seconded by Melissa Green. And let the record show that council members in attendance are all of us except Chip Keller, who had a pre-scheduled vacation, and Vicki Kivett as well has a vacation this week. So they are not with us, but we have a quorum, so we will go ahead with our meeting. And all of us got a copy of the clerk's monthly report. Were there any questions on that anyone had?
We vote on the minutes. You want to take a vote?
We did. Oh, I didn't take this. I had a motion in a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, moving along. Thank you, Jason, for keeping me in line. All right, we've got the clerk's monthly report. Did anyone have questions on it? That's always provided for our information purposes. We don't have to vote on it, it's just provided. And we thank you, Tammy, if you're here this evening, for providing that for us. We have always the last meeting of the year can be no additional appropriations, but we do have a lot of times transfers. So we have several of those this evening. Does the council wish to go through those individually, or did we have questions to discuss on any of them? Thoughts, comments? Looks like we've got the Sheriff's Department with transfer. You want to talk to us, Sheriff? Sure. Okay, come on down.
Evening, Council.
Good
Evening.
evening.
Appreciate your time. We've just got some money left over here at the end of the year that we want to transfer make some transfers for oil and tires to our patrol cars, and ammo and flares over to our patrol cars also, and vehicle repair supplies over to patrol cars. We're going to get some new patrol cars that we're wanting to transfer that money to.
Thank you. It looks like we have a total of $20,500 to be transferred as presented.
Roy Sprinkle make the motion to approve that transfer.
Brian Copeland, second.
We have a motion by Troy Sprinkle, seconded by Brian Culp. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, council. Merry Christmas.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Do we have the recorder in attendance this evening?
She could not be here this evening. She is transferring to cover the salaries for the chief deputy position. When she did the budget, she had that as a different title than chief deputy.
Okay,
So we just needed to bring that up a little bit.
and this will finish it out for the year?
Yes,
And we're okay with it for 2025?
yes.
Okay. So we have a request for a transfer of $1,273.22.
Jason Maxwell will make the motion to transfer.
Thank you, Jason.
Melissa Green will second.
We have a motion by Jason Maxwell, seconded by Melissa Green. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. EMS. Brent? So you got plenty of gas and fuel and tires?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. We're just maximizing funds for this budget period to extend subscription services to RQI for the next 2 years,
Okay,
contractual services.
all right. And that'll get you through the rest of, for 2 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that an issue, paying them in advance?
I don't know how this
Not
contract-
typically with the contractual agreement, with the subscription for 24-month period.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
common.
Okay, we have a request for a $15,000 transfer from gas, fuel, tires, and supplies and training to contractual services.
Melissa Green will make the motion to approve that transfer of $15,000 over to contractual services.
Melissa?
Brian Copeland, second.
We have a motion by Melissa Green, seconded by Brian Culp. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Brent. Motion carries 5-0. Parks and Recreation, Kenny.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
Just asking for a transfer from part-time community correction officer into equipment to be able to get a freestanding wave slide for Old Town Waverly Park at the playground, a Little Tykes turtle climber that's going to be going to Burkhart Creek, as well as a 12-by-16 storage garage shed going to Wilbur Community School. Our other shed is, the floor is kind of falling out of it.
All right. So we have a request of $20,605.90 from part-time corrections officer to equipment.
Roy Sprinkle make the motion to approve that transfer.
Thank you, Troy.
Maxwell seconds.
We have a motion by Troy Sprinkle, seconded by Jason Maxwell. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, ladies
Thank
and
you, Ken.
gentlemen, and have a nice Christmas.
You too, thank you. All right, we have a commissioner's transfer. Address that?
Good evening, council. So this ARPA transfer, if you guys remember, we need to have all of our ARPA funds obligated by the end of this year. This helps us get some funds into some, essentially capital areas that we estimated, that we didn't need, into the aquifer study that we're working on.
And it looks, see, we've got one for $50,000 from supplies to the aquifer study, another for $65,199 from equipment to the aquifer study, and land purchase $655.63 to the aquifer study.
That's right.
Any questions?
Actually, I do have a question. Not really specifically to this transfer, but with this aquifer study, I know at the State House this year, or this next year, it looks like water is going to be one of their big issues. Is there any talk of, if the state starts paying for these and we've already done ours, will we get reimbursed at some point, or what?
Great question. So we don't know, you guys helped us fund a lobbyist to really have our voice heard at the State House. We've been meeting with legislators over the last month or so, trying to get our viewpoint out there and help our legislators in particular know that we're a resource. The state, nobody knows what's going to happen yet. They may fund some of these studies, they may not, but we are actively negotiating with the state now to see if they'll reimburse up to about $1 million, but we won't know until the end of this year. If they do it, they're going to use their ARPA funds, which also have to be obligated by the end of this month.
Any other questions or comments?
I would move to approve the transfer.
Brian Coppel, second.
We have a motion by Jason Maxwell to approve the transfer as presented, seconded by Brian Culp. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, we're going to move on to some new business this evening. I think Linda's going to talk to us about the 2025 salary ordinance amendment.
Yes, I told you when we adopted it that I'm quite sure we'll be back. So here we are. When the girls started entering everything and updating the rates in payroll for 2025, one thing we noticed, I had an error in the dates, so we've corrected that. In the auditor's office, the bookkeeper and grants position, we've updated the account number that had been being paid out of a first deputy line, so we've just fixed that. In the health services, the public health nurse was listed as 3, but there are actually, or was listed as 2, but there are actually 3. One of the nurses is grant funded. And the health educators, originally at budget workshop, she was asking for health coaches, but now that she has done the WIS study and created the job descriptions, she would like those to be listed as health educators. So we have updated that name. She will be back at some point to address the salary on that, but I have left it as what was adopted at the time.
Okay. So it could result in additional amounts, or additional funding? Any
I think
idea how
once-
much?
Once they did the WIS study, I think the salary is on the low end, from what I'm hearing, but that hasn't gone to the Job Maintenance Committee yet,
Okay.
so
Is HR here this evening?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Questions or comments? Just need a motion to approve the amendments as presented. Kim Meredith will make a motion to approve the salary ordinance amendments as presented.
Troy Sprinkle will second.
I have a motion by Kim Meredith, seconded by Troy Sprinkle. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. In your packet, we all have to complete those conflict of interest forms. And Chip Keller had completed his, but as we know, he sells paper products and things to everybody. So he did have a conflict of interest on that, and he has presented that to us. So we just need to, we don't need it.
Just need to vote to accept it.
Okay. So we do need a motion to accept that conflict of interest.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Okay. We have a motion by Troy Sprinkle to accept the conflict of interest for Chip Keller, William R. Chip Keller to be exact, and Melissa Green has seconded that. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, on to the topic of this evening, I think. Grab that list, if we could. And this is the second reading of the ordinance 2024-27 PTO policy update. And Josh, you want to
Yep, I'll kick us off.
kick us off?
So many of you have contacted both Dre and me since the council, since your last council meeting in early December. Mostly you were looking for clarity about questions you received, which is exactly what you should be doing. I also want to thank the employees who respectively reached out and engaged both with you all and the commissioners and Dre and myself, because not everybody did that. I have to say that I've been fairly shocked with the pushback and rumors this policy has caused. I'm thinking, and I say this mostly tongue-in-cheek, that we should rename this the Josh and Dre Double Secret PTO Plan of World Domination.
You may need to pull that. Can everybody hear him? I know Josh speaks pretty low, but you can't hear it, Brad? I'm going to have to ask you to speak up.
Okay. Hear me any better now?
Big boy.
Enunciate.
I will give it my best. How's that?
There you go. Thank you.
So I've told some of you who reached out, I'm not here to convince any of you of the merits of this policy. We're the commissioners. That's what you guys do, because this isn't our policy. This policy is based on the feedback and suggestions of 14 different people who worked as elected officials, department heads, and employees. Some of those folks are in this room tonight. After meetings with the committee, we worked with WIS to update the policy and provide it to the full committee for review in January of 2024. There was no dissent from anyone on the committee. In November of 2024, we had the auditor, the council president, and payroll review the policy, and then we sat on it until all departments were on board with the new electronic timekeeping. I tell you all this background to address the rumors that this was done in secret. This is how public process is supposed to play out. Ordinances and policies are drafted and introduced, and then there's time for review and reflection both by the elected officials and the public. So I want to reiterate what I said at your last meeting. This policy isn't presented in a perfect form. The last one we had wasn't perfect. The next one we have won't be perfect. But as both public servants and elected officials and non-elected officials, we should always try to balance the tension of employee benefits and compensation with taxpayers in mind. I personally, as an employee, think that this policy does that, but this is where you all come in, where you get to debate the merits. I have a feeling there'll be plenty of employees that would like to share their input, but the way I see it, the council has 4 options tonight. You can table it, you can reject it, you can amend things you don't like, or you can pass it as it stands. And so I turn it over to you, Madam President.
All right, thank you, sir. Before we start, is there anyone else that wants to sign up to speak? Because now we have 6 people that are going to speak. So if there's anyone else, speak now or forever hold your peace. So we're going to start with Cassie Milady. Cassie, you want to come on up? And we are going to limit it to 2 or 3 minutes tonight, just for time constraints and so that we can all get out of here before midnight.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
I'm a little shorter than Josh, so.
I gotcha.
I'm actually just going to introduce Jody Law. She works at the prosecutor's office. She's going to speak on behalf. Why am I? Is that me? Sorry.
No, you're good.
There. Is that okay?
There you go.
I apologize. She's going to speak on behalf of our office. She's worked for the county for 29 years, and she's really looked into this and I think represents our office and what our concerns are. I would just say one thing that, as you know, the county any county offices or any county administrations, we don't always have the highest pay because, private sector pays more. But our PTO benefits and our other benefits sometimes make that up. And so they're really important to employees. So I'll pass it on to Jody.
Thank you, Cassie. Good evening, Jody.
Good evening, council. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll keep it brief. I've spoken with a few of you already previous to today. And while I understand that changes do probably need to be made, I am only asking in a couple of areas that you would please consider some revisions. My first point is this 5-day accrual upon everyone's anniversary date. And as I have previously let it be known that 5 days is not a lot. I'm not too worried about myself. I've been here a long time. I do have a little bit of a surplus that I can kind of hold back. I have aging parents, this, that, and the other. But you take, for example, a new employee. We have a new employee who just went on maternity leave in October. So she had to exhaust what she had. She doesn't qualify for FMLA because she's not been here long enough. So now when she returns in January, she's not going to have any time. So for a young mother, she has 3 children under the age of 5. 5 days is not very long. I was sick at the beginning of November, and I exhausted 4 of my own PTO hours or days due to illness. I have a surplus, so I'm not too concerned with myself. But I am thinking of others, and my proposal would be if you would consider somewhat of a tier system. Like maybe if you are adamant on the 5 days for the first year you're here, then perhaps consider 6 days for 2 and go on so forth. For me, I know I'm maxed out, but I can tell you 24 days on the front with the rest accumulating over the course of the 26 pays is a lot easier to swallow than the 5 days. So with that, I think I respectfully ask you to just make some of those considerations. 5
Appreciate that.
days just truly is not, it's not enough. My other point of view, I'll be brief, I know others want to speak, is my own somewhat confusion on this sick bank. And I do understand perhaps what is trying to be done here. I think for me, why would you make me roll hours over into a sick bank? Why not leave it in my own PTO bank to manage? I think, I know there's been some concerns perhaps with people that may not be able to adequately manage their time. And I do understand that, I really do. Respectfully though, for those of us that do manage our time accordingly, that's not fair. And I'm not being disrespectful. This is just my heart to you. I've been here a long time, and I love working here. I love working who I work for and my coworkers. So I'm not disgruntled. I'm not being disrespectful. But for those two areas, I would ask that you would please consider some revisions in your policy, and I'm going to let the next person have the floor.
Thank you,
for
Jody.
your time. Have a good evening.
Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Okay, so next up we have Brad Shields. You don't work for the county?
I'm sorry?
I said, you don't work for the county?
No, I don't work for the county. I'll try not to shout. But that's a good segue for me, because I'm here as a Morgan County resident in disbelief that this council or these commissioners would ever consider in the slightest defunding law enforcement. I'm going to ask a question in a minute of you, and I'd like an answer from one of the elected officials. And there's a lot of other employees, but I'm basically speaking for everybody in Morgan County who's going to have to wait for another call, or decide if I got poachers in my woods, I go in by myself because we're understaffed. You think we're going to keep the quality that we have now? Do you think we're going to be able to recruit when we have to compete with other counties? We are growing, we are changing. We all know that. We want lesser law enforcement in a greater community? Not going to happen, can't happen. So with that, I will fight that. But I have a question. What's the goal? What was the motivation? What is the outcome, hope of this resolution? Can someone tell me why it's even here?
Good question. I know part of the issue that I've been explained to is we had some folks that were cashing out at the end of the year to that time. And fiscally, we can't do that. We can't continue to do that. And in the private sector, you don't see it happening anymore either. It's a different day. So to me, that has been the biggest issue of the change. And then we also have had some that have abused their time. It is situations in which they may be leaving employment from the county, and we get some that may, or maybe, and when I say that leaving, they may be going on to another job, or they may be retiring. And so we've got some that are taking off maybe the last quarter of the year because they have enough time to do that. Well, that's putting us in a precarious position in the sheriff's department as well as other departments that we can't hire somebody else because we're still on year 2024 that we've got the budget for. So we can't hire somebody to come in and fill those positions. So we're short of people. So those are two of the main issues that we're seeing.
And I appreciate that, and I understand that. And I can only come from a private side, not very active on the public side. I would address those two issues. I would address them directly.
Exactly.
If it were me, I would not restructure my entire salary structure, my whole payment structure. I would not look at my senior employees. I would attack that. If they're cashing out, let's deal with that. If they're going at the end, let's put some limitations within how it's used and not used. But what's happening here is you have veterans being punished, less money, and our recruitment's going to go down and we're going to lose quality officers. We ask them to do too much with too little as it is. And it just blows my mind, instead of addressing two issues, we're willing to risk all this other effects instead of just dealing with those two issues right there. I think that could be done pretty well, pretty easily, and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So,
Appreciate that. And we appreciate you being
all
here.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Dan Downing from the Morgan County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How is everyone this evening?
We are good, thank you.
Probably hoping for a shorter meeting than what we're about to get.
It's all right, we've got things to deal with.
So I've collectively been chosen to represent the 35 merit deputies that work within the Sheriff's Department. I, for one, am not saying that the PTO policy doesn't need to be readdressed. I am saying, though, that there are some issues that are going to directly affect the way that the Sheriff's Office functions, and I would like for you to take those into consideration. So, employees that began their career prior to 2021 worked 1 full year at 90% pay before they were given a single day off, and then that entitled you to 5 days after your first year. That alone accounts for 48 people within the Sheriff's Department. Employees that begin their employment after January 1 of 2021 receive 14 days after their 90-day probation. So those people were what is being called front-loaded. They're getting their time before it's being earned. That affects 58 people in the Sheriff's Office. So those of us that started in 1997, we've earned our benefit time. We're in the rear. By giving that to us in small segments, you're giving us something that we already earned. The accrual factor, as it's listed, is actually unreasonable. So I personally will get 8 hours and 0.3077 hours of time every pay period. That translates to 18 minutes and 44 seconds. How am I supposed to use that? That is the most confusing thing in the world, and employees are going to have problems. We're going to have a problem tracking it. No one's going to know exactly, without doing the math, that this is what you have. I think that's just an unreasonable idea to even try to work with that. The PTO bank, again, I think that's it's very unique. Anything over 480 hours will be placed into a PTO bank. So legacy employees that have been here and they've already earned their time will effectively be punished by being a loyal employee to the county because they are going to lose their time that they've been given. All of your time over 480 hours will be placed into a bank that you can't get to unless you have a catastrophic event after you have exhausted all of your other time that you've earned. I think that's unreasonable also, and I think you should look at that and maybe look at how that's going to impact people. The current policy already establishes that an employee cannot use PTO to extend their employment. It also says that you will only be compensated for 240 hours upon your departure from the county. If we enforced that rule, as it's written in the current policy, we wouldn't be having this issue right now. Most of the issues that we have with this policy is actually derived from the 12-hour PTO model. So the new policy reduces the hours that are provided to a 12-hour employee, which is our deputies, which is a loss of 42 hours of PTO time in their first year, 84 hours at 10 years, and 114 hours after being a long-term good employee for the county of 20 years. That's pretty detrimental. So, and those numbers continue down from 1 year to 20 years. 12-hour employees currently lose 4 hours for their birthday. They lose 4 hours for holidays, and they lose 4 hours for bereavement days. They're only rewarded in an 8-hour segment, so they have to use additional time to get their entire shift off or take a portion of a shift. The effect that this is going to have on the Sheriff's Department as a whole is decrease in morale because they were already being given a benefit that is essentially going to be taken away from them. It's going to be difficult for us to retain our current employees because they can go elsewhere and get more time off. So our salary is no longer number one or number two in the surrounding areas, and deputies will leave. And I know of 3 that are going to leave if this occurs. So then I have to replace them. So then that comes to the recruitment issue. So I have a brand-new police officer, whether he's right out of the military or whether he's a college graduate, and he comes here and he applies. And then he applies at Martinsville PD. He doesn't care, he just wants a job. He has no ties to this community. He looks and sees that we're going to give them 112 hours of PTO, and Martinsville's gonna give them 300 on day 1. Where would you go? Martinsville. So we are not going to have the quality of candidates that we have now. We're not gonna keep the experience that we have now. And as we work our way down the road, it's gonna cause us lots of issues. Again, I'm not saying we don't need to revamp it some way, but I don't think that as it's written is the way. But I do want to thank you guys for your time. Thanks for listening to our concerns, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. All right, we have Brent Worth from EMS. Can you see it? Can you see it? Good evening, Brent.
Good evening again. So I'll shift gears just a little bit because mine's basically over the holiday pay model, the 4.2 of the policy. I sent out my
You
my
may need to pick up
understanding-
that mic too. I don't know, if can you hear back there?
Okay. So shifting gears, mine's over the holiday pay, 4.2 of the policy. That was kind of attached to the PTO portion and included in the update. And I think the most I remember of it is like it just being published on the 26th of November. It was recently amended on December 9th. I sent out a document to each of you. Hopefully you had
I
a
did.
chance to review that.
Thank you. I did. I think everyone got a
That
copy
kind
of
of drafted out my understanding of that and how that developed. And with that being said, I can answer questions on what I sent you all, but I would recommend that we at least suspend that portion until we're given an opportunity to examine, maybe a better way to do that. Whether that's, I figured there's 3 holidays in the first quarter of the year. Maybe we can revisit that third quarter and come up with a better idea and have time to do that. So that's my
Did
recommendation
you have any
at this
questions
point.
on what Brent had sent over to us? All right, duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge Williams. Good evening, sir. I see we have 2 leg lamps this year.
Just one?
One? I thought I saw a second one.
Somebody else may have one.
Oh,
I didn't
maybe
get
that's
my
it.
second one out.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you. I just wanted to kind of come in on behalf of the judges and just kind of share concerns that I have based on this so far. First of all, it's my understanding none of the judges were consulted in any of this before it landed with a thud at the last meeting. I just spoke with Josh. He says Miranda from probation was involved. None of the elected office holders were consulted about this or discussed this at all. For that reason, I would ask you to table this so we can talk about it. Second, under that same vein, under separation of powers, we ought to have some buy-in on this or we can just kind of go our own way. We have no interest in doing that, but again, feel like we ought to have a seat at the table when this is being drafted as opposed to when it's being debated on the cusp of being approved. Having said all of that, I have some just kind of unintended consequences concerns about what we're doing. First, the idea that we're creating 2 kinds of paid time off, this sick bank versus regular paid time off. I think the prevailing winds are to just make it one thing and not have to administer what it is exactly and just leave it to the employee to decide whether they want to burn compensated time off or not, whether it's for illness or family or doctor's appointments, health maintenance, vacation, what it is. Why we're trying to create layers of complication versus streamlining things does not make sense to me. As a layer on that, the idea of creating a sick bank that somehow takes earned hours that you already have, if I understand this, and like putting a restriction on them, I'm not sure how you do that when you've got an earned, established property right without getting yourselves sued in some way for taking away something someone had already earned. Layered on top of that, if you're going to make people take the time, as opposed to paying them for it, which you're already running to that, where people are gone for long periods of time and come back for a day or two or three and then separate. If they're not allowed to bank that time, we're going to be creating a situation where they have to use or lose it all the time during the year, and we're still going to have a lot of absences. And I don't know if that will create more scheduling problems for being able to be an effective office when you have a staff of 3 as opposed to a staff of 90 for some of us who, again, were not consulted. So I have some concerns about that. The other thing that kind of really concerns me is just this whole kind of use it or lose it thing that it looks like we're setting up for, that it's just going to really create a morale problem, and it's going to create a scheduling problem where at least the smaller offices like mine are going to have to be thinking about that in our calculus of how we maintain our employees, care for them, make sure they get the benefits of their job, and then still actually have people in the front lines in the trench when we're doing a trial or having busy things that happen. So that creates another layer, I think, of administration. Finally, again, separation of powers, judicial, very jealous of that versus the legislative or the executive. Love Doree, she's not approving my people's time in any way, shape, or form. That's not how it's supposed to work, and I would hope that you would not set that up. So those are my concerns. I would ask you to table this and consult with all the judges at least one time before we move forward on anything like this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Judge. And our last one is Judge Van Lan. I got close, didn't I?
It's all right.
I'd call you Judge Dakota when I say it now.
1 year you'll figure it out. Sorry. All right. My first and foremost comment that I resonate with is we are punishing loyal employees. If you want to see how this pans out, simply look at the Department of Child Services and what they did with their hiring process and what they did with their long-term employees. They gave all of the benefits and all of the perks to their new employees while giving nothing to their long-standing employees. There was mass exodus, and the average education level dropped to a GED. That is what is required for a Department of Child Services agent to tell you what to do with your children. And the response, because of that reduction, was to lower the entry, lower all the entry qualifications. I can tell you the last time that the courthouse did any sort of interviewing, the average application that came in, and this is just for a court staff, was a Chili's waitress. I know you don't see what we do every single day, but that's not gonna cut it. I have incredibly talented employees. Our courthouse has incredibly talented, dedicated employees who have been here for 5, 10, 15, 20, almost 30 years. To not reward that system is encouraging these people to leave when you can find any online job now and make $60,000. They don't make $60,000, but they do it out of the dedication that they have for this county. We cannot function without them. I agree with the prosecutor's office. We need a tiered system. We're not asking you to throw out this policy. It has great merits. I understand. We don't want someone to hit their anniversary and quit the next day. It has an excellent purpose, and we thank you for acknowledging that and changing that. However, it has some fatal flaws. And by giving 5 days, that is not enough. I have a 2-year-old. She likes to lick the walls in daycare. I can tell you that I have gone out more than 5 days. And while that doesn't directly impact how I do my time, I'm going to bat for every employee. Second, this is completely unfair to the Sheriff's Department. I don't like throwing shade on other counties. But if you want to see how this pans out, when you mess with the Sheriff's Department, you change their funding, you change their time, you change their hours, or anything of the nature, look no further than Monroe County. I used to be an officer in Monroe County. If you want to know the qualifications of what they are admitting into their law enforcement program at this point, I would be afraid to work with them, let alone to be a resident there. Do not get rid of the talent that we have by messing with their hours. I agree with Judge Williams. You cannot take away something that has been earned. Also, don't punish those who are loyal enough to be here every single day, my staff included. Find a way to do the accrual system to benefit longevity and to not disinterest people from staying here in Morgan County. Our whole agenda is to pull people and keep them. So change the policy, please, so that we can keep this talent here in Morgan County. Do not lose these boys back here and girls that we had and we lost to IMPD. IMPD bought everyone out. You're gonna do it again. So please, keep our county safe, keep our staff here that's dedicated to the cause, and just make some changes. That's it. Just make some changes to the system. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So this is our second reading of it this evening, and then we've invited questions. Josh, did you have anything else you wanted to address after that? Okay. So, did any of us have any questions of anyone or points to make before we take a vote?
You know me, I can't keep my mouth shut, so. We definitely need to update the policy. I acknowledge that, I agree with that. I've talked to a lot of you over the last couple of weeks. My personal opinion is that we should table it and it needs some work. That's my personal opinion. I do know that to show our appreciation to the employees that have been here longer, you do get an annual, like a December longevity pay, right? And so that's always nice to have at Christmas time. I just think that, I think there are some flaws, but I think we need a change. I think Judge Dakota said it well. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Melissa. I know I've talked to a lot of you in the last few days. Some of you, I had to text back and say, I cannot talk, I do not have a voice, and I apologize. I was down with pneumonia, but I'm back now, and I've called most of you back on that. I've got a couple of issues with it. When I delved into this committee that was formed, I looked back to see who the members of that committee were, and 2 of them haven't been here in nearly 2 years. Right. So then I went to ask questions. When did the committee last meet? 2 years ago. So that tells me that we've not got a current handle on the views from that committee. The other issue was kind of history. I think in our county, we were notorious for years of not having really good pay. I mean, it's just a fact. And I think we had done some things to offset that with some extra time off, PTO, and longevity, and things that we could try to do to offset not being able to pay better than other counties do. We've been fortunate in the last several years that we've been able to bring that pay up. We've used the WIS study, which I know some of you hate it. I heard about that too. But it is a tool to use, and I think it's been helpful in getting some people to the level that we need to be, and we'll continue to use that. But I have a real hard time with telling people you can't have your time. I mean, that's your time. And to say you can't get it when it's due. And I agree there are issues. There are issues that we can't continue to pay out large sums of when you want to gather all those hours and not use them, and then you want your big check when you retire. We're just not fiscally able to do that. So in my opinion, it needs worked on. Maybe we reconvene with a new committee, an up-to-date committee, and I agree, the judges need to be in on that. They need to be a part of that committee. So in my opinion, I think we table it, go back to the drawing board, and work on it maybe in the first quarter of 2025.
So I'm willing to make a motion. I would make a motion that we reject this as it is, with the instruction that it go back to have further study and bring us back a new.
We have a motion on the floor by Brian Culp to reject the.
Jason Maxwell seconds.
Okay, we have a motion by Brian Culp, seconded by Jason Maxwell. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I think
Oh,
Troy
do you
had
have a
a,
question? I thought you were voting.
I wanted to say something. I mean, the votes are, I voted yes
Okay, so let's go ahead and do the vote, and then you can speak. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries for rejection, 5-0. Thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to say that it's apparent there's an issue, and more than one. The folks, this is just a small sampling of the fine folks that we have working for us here.
And we appreciate you coming out. We want to hear from you. Don't ever feel like you can't come to us, call us,
But
speak to us.
I just want to make a comment that, so I'm in banking, and my bank has a PTO policy, and it's across the board. And ours is pretty cut and dry, and it's rough. I mean, you use it or you lose it, period. But this is not a one-shot deal. Our guys in the back do a function, the folks at the courthouse do a function. Each individual department has its own separate way of doing what they need to do. And I think that that needs to be addressed in this committee, that these people, 12-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, holiday time, there's so many questions here that need to be put in front of that committee, and it needs to be addressed. But thank you for coming.
And your
Thank you.
Yes, your voices have been
And Mr.
heard.
Shields, I serve on another committee with Mr. Shields, and it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you.
For being a voice
As
in our
well as
community.
everybody else.
Another thing too is, I've said this to a couple of you. We serve you as the employer with the county, but we also serve you as a taxpayer. So we have to look out for you for that too. And so we do have to look out for our taxpayers. So I do appreciate you all showing up. I appreciate the phone calls. Hopefully you found all of us willing, open door policy to talk. And
At
I
any
want you to
time.
know that you can anytime,
Yes.
yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to old business. Nope, that was old business. I apologize. Other business. We had a 2025 council appointment, the Mooresville Public Library Board. Linda, you want to explain that? What was that? That was, someone wasn't able to finish their appointment time, is that correct?
Doug McCoy.
I think I've got it here too. Diane Herkamp is leaving. Is that correct? No?
The resignation of the current appointment. I think Doug McCoy was the one who resigned. Charlotte Messmer
Okay.
is their recommendation for an
Yeah,
appointee.
so the appointment we had for the Mooresville Public Library, the person that had been in that position has resigned, I think due to some family and health reasons. And so we have a, Diane Herkamp, of the director of the library at Mooresville, has given us a name of who they want to fill that position, and it is
Charlotte Messmer.
Charlotte Messmer. So if there's no opposition to that, I look for a motion to approve that.
Brian Culp would make a motion to approve assigning Charlotte Messmer to that board.
Thank you, Brian.
Troy Sprinkle will second.
We have a motion by Brian Culp, seconded by Troy Sprinkle. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, before we adjourn, though, this evening, we have had a wonderful council member here with us. Jason Maxwell has served us well. We've worked well together, and he's going to be leaving us at the end of the year, so this is our last meeting. And we want to tell Jason how much we appreciate him and what you've done for this council and what you brought. And we've got a little token of our thanks for working with us. And we wish you well in your new endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to say it's been an honor these 4 years. I never thought I would be up here until that January day I went downstairs and signed the paperwork to do this, and then I still thought, well, I won't win. But I did, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed all the county employees, getting to meet and know them, and I'm going to try to stay connected and do what I can for the county, and who knows, I might be back. So I still, if you have any concerns within the county, you can still contact me, and I can share it with my contacts, or even at the State House. I do some work up there through Farm Bureau, so if there's things you'd like told to those representatives, just let me know. But I've appreciated it, and thank you, everyone, for being so patient and kind these 4 years.
Thank you, Jason. Our next meeting will be the first Monday in January 6th. Oh, it's January 6th. See, I don't pay attention. January 6th will be our next meeting at 6:30 here, and you're always welcome to come. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your voices. Thank you. Have a Merry Christmas.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yes, make a motion to adjourn. I can't close it.
Merry Christmas. Take a vote.
Favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. We got things to sign.
Hey, come on. Are you seeing what is the end?